David King, hello.
Morning, G. How are you?
It's plenty for us to work with.
Well, it's the year that just keeps on giving. It has been, to put a full stop on it, it's been an unbelievable home and away season, hasn't it? And I think that sometimes you just got to stop and thank the players and the coaches and all those that make the game go around, because we've been treated this year. I think the actual game has never been more interesting. I know there's different highlights in the 90s and the early 2000s. The game looked different. We lost our game for about, I reckon, 5 or 6 years with congestion. But right now, every game is different. Coaches are approaching tactically the game in a different way, but it's free-flowing. You get an up-and-back game of basketball-type footy every 3 times around rather than once every 3 weeks. So I think we had a great year. And just want to thank everyone for that.
All right, let's start with the King's Gambit.
Well, this is coming from a from a club point of view. Okay, so people have a go at me. The coaches, I'm really comfortable, and you and I have been on this for quite some time. Comfortable with coaches bouncing around and changing, but from a club point of view, it's a different set of circumstances. You've got to work out, getting a read on whether you're improving or not as a football club. So your man Albert Einstein used to say, Gerard, the measure of intelligence is the ability to change. I'm looking at the GWS Giants, and I think Adam Kingsley has put so much pressure on clubs that are not evolving or changing or getting better in real time. So the pressure that Kingsley now puts on Luke Beveridge and Adam Simpson in particular is enormous. And it sort of started me thinking, okay, Kingsley's come in. He's been in for one season, and in reality, in half a season, because they were 3-7 at round 10, in half a season, they've become the 4th best attack and the 3rd best defence. They're the number 1 team since round 11, since that point, of points differential from intercepts, which is the number 1 indicator of success in the game, plus 19 points a game on turnover comparing to their opposition. He's done this without Taranto, without Hopper, without Hill, without Jeremy Cameron, and I think it makes me track back 3 to 4 years. And I know that GWS made a grand final, but there's no way we maximise this list. Absolutely no way. And I see the way that they are playing. It's corridor, it's high handball, it's play on, mark, play on, go forward, get going, get the ball into your forward half, and then play with pressure. And let's just see if the little champ at centre half forward, who stands taller than most at 182 centimetres, can get the job done. And they do it with a level of anger. There's a real passion about the Giants football this year that is a little bit intimidating for those that play. I mean, we've said for 2 years under Vossi that Carlton just bash you up. Well, they didn't bash them up yesterday, and they haven't. No one's bashed the Giants, and you get seduced by thinking, they're the freewheeling of Kelly and Whitfield, and they can look beautiful and they can do it. But they have corrected this club to what it should have been, in my opinion, 5 years ago. So don't be afraid of change. Change is a part of getting better and getting really healthy in your football program. So I'm in awe of what Adam Kingsley's been able to do in a short space of time, and he's grown, he's evolved, he's a different man than what he was 10 weeks ago. But it is scary. I don't know where they go this year. I don't know how far they go. But what I do know is that next year, the standards have gone through the roof. They'll be a better version in round 1, 2024 than what they are right now.
I think so this is 6 times in 12 years in the finals, and their fellow expansion club has never made it, which is that's a pretty good comparison point.
Yeah, but they made some mistakes with the first one. I don't know if it's completely fair, because they were given lots of extra leg ups, some extra high-end draft picks, the Giants. So I'm not comparing the two clubs at all. I just think there's been, if you really want to be quite honest and open about it, this is a club that I don't think played with this level of intelligence from a football sense, from a tactical sense, from a game plan sense for quite some time. And I think it's going to open the eyes of all club boards.
So don't fear change.
Don't fear change. Embrace it. And there's nothing wrong with shaking hands with someone and saying, hey, look, you've been good for us and we've been good for you. Here's your check. All the best. We've got to go and get better. And that's a real-time conversation the Monday after the close of business for the home and away season.
So that's the validation of the Giants. Let's get into the big issue. So let's take Carlton as the big issue as the other part of that game and what to make of this past fortnight. Had to go the distance against the Suns after falling 40 points behind, got the win to book their place in the finals, and then with nothing on the line yesterday had a really short breaking point.
Just think we've got to be careful. Fortnight is probably a different discussion. The round 24 discussion's a tough one because there's nothing to play for. Really can't go up, really can't go down. So the game is a bit of a meaningless one, and I can understand players subconsciously not going at 100%. Now, you never want to admit that as a player or a coach, and I think Vossi knows in the back of his mind. And a little bit of what Craig McRae said last week. You put a full stop now, and it's all gone. The previous 24 weeks right now mean nothing. You're on the grid. You've got your position. Here's your starting point. Let's go. So, yeah, the ins of Cripps and Doherty are massive to this group, but I was really concerned about what I saw behind the ball. Showed some vision last night of, just breaking down really easily. Like, good defences don't break down on what the opposition do for one or two disposals. So coming out of traffic, hit one target, you shouldn't be vulnerable after that. You should still be okay. But they were rolling around, trading up, you're leaving players out the back. And Lockie Keefe's not a threat unless you leave him 40 metres by himself in front of goals. He then becomes a threat pretty quick. Mitch McGovern, I showed him doing his shoelaces up last night. Well, the game's in live play. His man gets involved, takes a mark inside the forward 50. You think, are they really going full rat power? So I say no. But in the end, they've coughed up 105 points. And they haven't coughed up 100 points plus since round 8. So you do have to look at it. As much as you don't want to, you probably have to say, look, which is us? Because if you lose your defensive stability, you're gone. It's the only thing that matters. That and your ability to win the ball wherever the ball is. So there's a talent level in that, and there's also a structural component to that, how you get your outnumber and all that sort of stuff. But all of it assists your back line. Your goals are actually behind you, not in front of you. All premiership teams have the mindset that our goals are where our fullback is, not where our full forward is. So I think Vossi knows that he's got some tools to work with from a mental point of view, but the players need some credit. They've been fantastic for 3 months. So I don't think you over-assess round 24, and it's too short now. You've got to be positive with your group now.
Yes, yeah. Don't let the negative words in the door. So I was interested. We finally saw Harry Mackay go into the ruck. So I think round 3 on Crunch Time we were talking about this, the Danaher role. He did look all at sea. Like, he didn't look like he had any clue what he was doing going in there. So they had a look at it. Is that what they'll do come Friday week?
So you got to balance. You got to give something to get something.
Mm-hmm.
So they keep their run. They keep their ability to just keep up speed, and they're not. I don't think they're a great running team really. But if they bring in another tall, another ruckman, you've got to lose something. You lose someone in that squad that's a potential half forward goal kicker or a potential wing replacement, and you can get very cumbersome very quickly. Or do you just say, we're prepared to lose a few hit-outs, and maybe it's good for Harry, maybe it's good for him to actually have to compete and jump and take some physical contact. He doesn't look comfortable in there, and I don't blame him. I reckon it's the most awful role in football, jumping at centre-bounce clearances and basically running into someone else's knee. In a sane state, Gerard, you couldn't think that's good for your own well-being. So I think they'll look at he was involved in 25 ruck contests against Briggs, and they got smashed at clearances 17-7, but they didn't bleed. They didn't really cough up big scores from those lost clearances. So maybe you have to approach it different from behind the ball point of view while he's in the ruck to just cater for some loss. But I don't mind it. I think they'll stay with that. Or do you say clearances are everything for us? Cripps goes back in, and we just have to win clearance because this is our game. We are clearance driven as a footy club, and you say, well, the best way we can win clearance is to have a tap ruckman in there. So there'll be an arm wrestle going on.
Yeah.
One less runner for more clearances. Where do you sit?
Yep. And Harry hasn't had an impact yet as a forward in his 2 games back.
Yeah.
So how do you manipulate him into that side?
Yeah. Well, they're wedded to Harry. Harry's playing. So forget that his role is in question. He's playing. So he's effectively a centre half forward or your full forward, whichever way you want to look at it. But the ruck position, can you just go with one? And what happens if you get an injury in the ruck? What happens if De Koning goes down in first quarter of a final, which happened to Brisbane? Was it last year?
Yeah.
Happened to Brisbane last year, and all of a sudden you've got to manufacture. Now you've got to have the tools to be able to cater for that. So a Silvani or a Pitton are very important.
I don't want Harry rucking for 3.5 quarters.
No, neither does Harry.
No. Preliminary final integrity, so nothing matters more than this right now. And we thought, well, the 4 teams who sit in those positions as those fighting for preliminary finals, we should just run the rule over them. What do we learn about each of the top 4 on a weekend that saw Collingwood do as it pleased with Essendon? The Lions make things harder than it might have been against St Kilda. Port Adelaide had to go the distance with Richmond, but edged away at the end. And then Melbourne, with nothing to play for, they did find the merit in fighting the good fight and overwhelmed Sydney from a position that was slipping away. PFI, our top 4, David King.
Who do you want to start with?
Collingwood.
They're just a fascination for me, Collingwood. And I look at that ball that the opposition are trying to bring out of their defensive 50 and the thirst to chase turnover and outnumber, and Maynard wants to do it, and Darcy Moore when he's there wants to do it. Nathan Murphy when he's there wants to do it. Isaac Quainer wants to do it. So they all want to rush and they want to be the man to win it back, which is admirable, which is the way you want your players thinking and feeling. And then they had about 10 moments where it's on a knife's edge. Maynard decides to leave his man and go straight at the ball carrier. On the weekend, the ball carrier was under a fair bit of pressure because Essendon want to play the chip game. So as soon as they're in live play, not in a static situation, the pressure consumed them a little bit. So Maynard rolling up is an easy kill at times because Essendon are not geared for what they're trying to commit. And bang, intercept, turnover, off they go, handball, and you see De Goey streaming through and knocking it through. You see Mitchell running full length of the ground, knocking it through. You see them at full speed and you go, wow, they're back. But that one ball that Maynard wins with a broken, with a gut-busting tackle on someone, a spilt ball or a coughed-up handball or just a surge ball, that one ball there, if the opposition do win, and I tried to show it, we tried to show it on first crack, and I know not everyone who's listening this morning can watch it. If that handball gets through, it's 5v2 in behind in the opposition's favour, and it's a stroll-in goal. So I keep saying it. I think they can beat anyone, but I think they can be beaten by anyone because of that one action, that one moment in time. In the old Any Given Sunday, 1 minute too late, one step too late is the same as one step too early. So if you can get through against Collingwood, you get easy scores. So they're going to play against some teams that can handle the heat. And so I don't know where it leaves them for next Thursday night. But if they do play like they did the other night, and if they can spook Melbourne, which is a tough thing to do because they love contact. They've been training for contact for 2 years, 3 years. So it was good to see their forward half game back. It was the best forward half return that they'd had for 14 weeks. 8 goals, 351 from stoppage and turnover in their forward half. So a lot to like. The juggling act now of returning stars. When does Moore come back? Where does he play when he comes back? I'd even look at exploring options with him. I wouldn't just be rusted on putting him down full-back. It'll be okay behind the ball with Murphy and Frampton. I'd like to use him a bit more aggressively. One of our great mates who we lost recently, Matt Rendell, always talked about him playing in the ruck as a roaming ruckman. Could he play? Could he play 5 minutes a quarter as a roaming Cameron Mooney-style ruckman? Would he cause some chaos doing that? Well, I think there's tools, and I just feel like Craig McRae's got something up his sleeve. I don't know what it is, but I think he's prodded a few. He's prodded Mason Cox back into some serious form. He's playing now with some real vigour, and he's competing like I haven't seen him compete for ages. He's always been a good mark forward of the ball, but in the ruck, he's throwing himself in, he's chasing, he's harassing. So the work he's done with Jack Ginnivan, he looked terrific. He goes at half the speed of the others, but he's always got the footy. So he's had a huge impact on this group. So there's a lot to like about where Collingwood are at right now. And forget, as we keep saying, forget what's happened the previous month. And everyone will say, oh, you know, we talk a lot about the runway, but I think they're getting their game back, albeit against poor opposition.
Brisbane Lions, sort of one of those vintage days. It's if they'd kicked properly around goal, they would have had that game put to bed early, but had to go the distance.
Yeah, and does bad goal kicking stay with you? I don't know.
They were so good the week before against Collingwood.
Oh, they were. You're right. Yeah, the big boys were knocking them through for everything.
Yeah.
Oh, it's one of my great fears. Having lost the grand final with bad goal kicking, I think we kicked 8 goals, 22 or something. I think it was 4-17 at half time or something ridiculous, Gerard.
Yep.
I always fear good teams just having an off day in front of goals and having your final series run aground. But the big wins for Brisbane were Lachie Neale again, stamping another performance, 10 clearances. And Dane Zorko put 2 good weeks together in a row, 10 score involvements for him. So he'd been a player for me without a position, really. Like, he's not really a midfielder. He's sort of a half-forward flanker, but he can go back. Hey, just influence the game. So 10 score involvements was a game high. And their forward half game, their intercept game, St Kilda couldn't move the ball. That first half, they couldn't move. Ross Lyon almost laughed about it in the post-half-time interview. He said, we're going to have to take some risk. We have to throw up the middle because we can't get through them. And it was a good arm wrestle after that. And they got the test again at the end. I like Brisbane getting tested. And people take this as a negative. They've only been involved in 3 games decided by 10 points or less for the year. So you need a bit of practice. You don't want your first opportunity in a prelim late.
Yes.
Like, you want it 5 times, 10 times through the course of the year if you can, so you know exactly what's required and what to handle. So they'd be pretty happy with their performance, particularly if they're going to win at Brisbane. It's because of their ability to lock the ball in the forward half, and they are the number 1 scoring forward half team for the year. So they're asset rich.
Port Adelaide, for a little while yesterday, you worried that they were going to fumble all their good work. They didn't. They straightened themselves out in the last quarter and banked their win.
Yeah, and there are known problems with Port. I don't think they're the best back 6. I don't think they're the best forward 6. So between the arcs at both ends, there are flaws. And I think that they will be exposed for that in a preliminary final. And there's some work to do with the list build to give Ken the perfect opportunity to win it. And there's obvious targets out there if they're prepared to get deals done. Their midfield are the reason that they're going to be alive. Teams are going to clue on in the finals that you can't allow Dan Houston to have 5 shots at goals getting handball receives from those who've marked the ball around the arc. So he had 5 shots at goals. He's had 20 shots at goals as a halfback flanker for the year. Ridiculous numbers.
Yep.
I think he's only kicked about 9 of the 20, but they're giving him the ball. So you've got to be awake up to that. Sam Powell-Pepper did it again yesterday. Charged straight through the stoppage on train tracks, rip, tear or bust, gets the clearance, kicks the goal. Like, it all happens in a flash. But he's doing the same thing every forward 50 stoppage. They're the number 1 forward 50 stoppage team in the competition. Don't get beaten by what you know. If you're not ready for this, and they kick 3 goals, and they've kicked 5, I think, is their best for the year from forward 50 stoppages. If they kick 3 and a 5, that'll be enough.
Yep.
That'll be enough. So don't allow Powell-Pepper to be the reason. And then they've just got the freak factors, of Rosie and Butters in particular, and Horne-Francis is probably just a fraction behind them, but he makes up a pretty important trio. So how they service for ruckman, I don't know where that sits. Over the next couple of weeks, we'll get greater detail. There's a few to come back into that lineup, so we're sort of a bit unaware of their physical status, how healthy they are, and were they just managed or were they just desperate? Were they out? So probably more question marks with Port than answers, but they've qualified third.
And then Melbourne have finished fourth. Piqued their interest when they fell 17 points down. They didn't have anything to play for. It didn't matter. They kicked the last 6 goals of the game.
I admire their leadership group. If you picture yourself as a player, Gerard, if going into a final series and you can pick a group of 4 guys to play behind. Gawn, Petrarca, Viney, Oliver. They just perform. Stephen May's in there as well. I mean, they've got about 7 guys that would be a frontline leader at every other club, be the number one man at other clubs. And when the game's in the balance, no one says anything. It's almost just like a look. It's at the stage where they just look at each other and say, this is it. Come on, now's the time to win the game. And Viney goes into full wrecking ball mode. Gawn gets interested again. I don't think he was hard. I think he was semi-interested in yesterday's game.
Yep.
But when it's on the line, hey, righto, let's win this. Petrarca goes next level. They couldn't tackle him yesterday. I'm not saying he was best on ground or anything like that. And then you see what that allows. So the support crew are allowed to just sort of impact the game in their own way. And Bailey Fritsch comes back in, and it's like, oh, geez, now I know. This is why they won it in 2021. This guy going crazy in a final series or in a grand final. So you see it. Now, they had a big emotional loss and a big structural loss with Melsham doing his ACL. So that'll hurt him this week. There'll be a bit of grieving this week.
Yep.
Because he's been very good.
So good.
Hasn't he?
And he shared his story with all of us. Crunch Time a few weeks ago. Right. He was on with Gerard and Kane. Just all the hard work that he's done and the days in the VFL just biding his time where he was playing well enough but there was no place for him, and then he comes in and he has a huge impact.
Yeah.
Huge impact. And the Lions game was emblematic of that, but it's not in a singular moment.
And he plays with that hard edge. He's a bit of a killer, like he's a guy you don't really want to play on because you're not sure if he's going to jump on your head, punch you in the back of the head, be brutal at ground level, but you just know it's going to be hard. So he's going to be hard to replace. But in the end, I think Melbourne's anger and physicality and the ability to win contests through loving competing. They just have done this since minute 1 of pre-season. We said there'd be a lull. We said they'll start well, there'll be a lull, and they'll try and peak their performance towards the finals. They are doing that, and they're probably the scariest proposition in it right now.
The open question for them is, and it's the same question, is what is their forward line going to look like? It was going to look like Petty and Melksham in there. Now neither of them will be there, and we're back to the same questions. Tom McDonald's start in the VFL, is that his passage back? Brodie Grundy had a lot of touches and kick goals. What is their forward line going to look like? Every time it looks like they've settled it, they have a stroke of misfortune.
So I had this argument with Hodgie on Crunch Time with you a couple of weeks ago. If you're going to have an injury at Melbourne, have it in the forward line because it's not why they'll win it. It's great. Okay, it's great to have all talent available, but if they lose a May or a Lever or a Gawn or a Petrarca or it's other, have an injury in the forward line because they don't rely on that. They've conceded 56, 60, 60 and 71 points the last 4 weeks. They're bulletproof behind the ball. It is rigid. Their grid system forces you long down the line to kick it straight back to Max Gawn. It's a trump card that no one else has. So, okay, injuries are bad, and in the same area, they compound the problem. But at Melbourne, in the forward half, it's not as big a deal as anywhere else.
What do you think they're going to do? Do you think Tom McDonald will come back?
Yeah, I think he will, and he's seen what the standard is, and he's been there before. He's a quality player, Gerard. So that whilst you lose one, and there's some sadness to that, it's just plug and play and let's go, move on.
Will you indulge my curiosity here?
Do I have a choice?
No. Did Petrarca, Bontempelli and Butters poll Brownlow votes in round 24?
Good
one at a
question.
time, okay? So Petrarca. Sellers gave Viney the votes yesterday
What?
ahead of Petrarca.
Did he?
It was
He gave Jason Holder
no,
a
so
jockey
I'm
votes.
not holding him up as our gold standard, but I'm just floating it out there. Was it Petrarca or Viney?
Well, the guy kicks 5 as well. Like, Fritz has got to be. I mean, 5's the new bag,
and
isn't
Goulden's
it?
going to get votes in that game.
Put yourself in the umpire's position. You've got to write down 3 names. You know it's round 24. You know this guy's in the hunt. You know he's probably in the top 4 or 5 players on the ground. And he was seriously impactful there when the game was in the balance. I think he gets 1, maybe 2.
Okay. Bontempelli. So there was Treloar, Isaac Smith and Bontempelli. Probably your box trifecta out of Saturday night.
So you're in the winning team.
Yep.
So you are elevated. I think he's 2 with the Bontempelli upgrade to 3. When they write down names and they have the Western Bulldogs games, Gerard, it always starts with M. Bontempelli as a 3. He has to work himself out of the 3 vote position.
Okay. And then there's Butters yesterday. So Butters and Rosie will split 3 and 2.
Which might happen a lot.
Yes. Yep.
So if Butters stacks a lot of 2s, it'll cruel him. He has to stack the 3s. Now, I think Rosie was probably better than Butters.
I
yesterday.
agree.
I think he's maximum 2, isn't he?
That was my feel.
Yeah.
So a good judge told me that he reckons Butters goes 3-2, 3-2 on the way home.
3-2, 3-2.
10 in the last 4 rounds. So remember he had the big block, 10-week block where he was brilliant, and then nothing. But he snuck back in the last 4 weeks. Bontempelli, I reckon when Dacos goes, he's between 3 and 5 behind.
No, he's more than that, isn't he?
No, I reckon that was our point when, because he polled, I've got to get my spreadsheet out. That's
I like
for later.
I like when you go spreadsheets.
That's for later. I reckon. So
you think
Dacos dried up before he got injured.
Yeah, he did.
And then Bontempelli polled before Dacos got injured. So I reckon he was 3 to 5, probably 5. What's he got in the back end? And then Petrarca's close as well.
I reckon Dacos was 9 or 10 in front with 6 rounds to go.
Yeah, well, that was the
7 rounds
round
to go.
20 marker that we put in, I think.
Yeah, but
And then Bontempelli pegged him back before he hit round 20.
he hadn't been polling for 3 or 4 weeks,
Yep.
Nick.
So we think that all of Petrarca, Bontempelli and Butters got votes to make for a thrilling final round of the count.
Yeah, and like there's ways to masquerade Western Bulldogs, and you go to do the long delay Bontempelli. How do you do it with Butters? Can you give me the Butters reading out of the late 3 for Butters? You can't hide it.
Mm.
Is it
No, there's no
Z,
there's nothing you
Z,
can
Zach?
help
What do you
with
do?
the Z,
What do you
is
go
there?
with? What do you,
No,
what do you
no,
do?
You can't build that there.
You can't build it up. We can't have Butters winning it because of the lack of build-up, Gerard.
So anyway, if the marker's Dacos at 31, that's where I've got him, it's going to get very, very tight in the final round.
Put it in the can now. Who wins it?
No, I'm not ready to do that. I'm not ready to do that. I don't want to do it frivolously. I will do that with you properly before we get to the count. It's too important.
You know what? I nearly sent this audio to Hodgie
It's
and
too
Sammy
im-
Edmund. I
it's just
nearly
too
had you to
important.
predict something.
All right, we've got pressure index and we've got the debate. What course of action do the Bulldogs take now that they have missed?
Yes.
What course of action do the Bulldogs take? They're out. This is a year they'd set up by their own determination to become the top 4 team that's been elusive, and they've missed the 8. What course of action do they take?
Yeah, they're in the worst possible phase right now, and that phase is that it's not me, it's you. They're blaming everyone else. It couldn't be Luke. No, it's definitely not Luke. It's definitely not him. It's got to be them. It's them. Okay, now it's got to be them. It's Mark Webb pays a price today. We see Rowan Smith pay a price. Oh no, I didn't sack him. He sacked him. He did this. He did that. They're in the phase of playing the blame game. Now, people will say, "Oh, but Richmond did this back in 2016." This is a different set of circumstances altogether. Richmond hadn't won a premiership then. They hadn't rang the rag dry on their group yet. They had scope and they knew it. Brendan Gale, to his credit, knew that. and said, no, he's our man. I'm telling you, it's totally different. He's our man. I'm going to get this support staff. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And the whole club changed. This is delicate, I think. I really do. And I don't know if Luke Beveridge is the problem. Only the players and those on the absolute inside who have got eyes wide open, who are not blinkered, who are not tied or associated with Luke, whether it's his appointment or his ongoing tenure. But I think to sort of just put that out there, what if it is Luke? How long do you fluff around for and massage every other department of your footy club? What if it is him? And we've just talked about Adam Kingsley. Change is okay. Change is great. It can be awesome if you get the right person, and clearly there's a risk in that. So part of the program when you're the senior coach is hiring around you on the edges to make your program the best it can be. Where you're short, personally, you need to fill spots around you to make sure that those flaws or those holes are not exposed, whether it be game day or during the week or during pre-season, wherever it is. It clearly hasn't done that. In the past, they've had Stephen King and Ash Hansen and Daniel Jones, all these guys that have been able to fill the void around the edges and formed a pretty good unit that won them a flag and got them to a grand final. So we're not disputing any of that, and we say, well done. Awesome. You'll never be forgotten at this footy club. But we've got to live in the now. So I don't think they've hired to admire. They don't love what they've got around the edges. They don't. And they're not AFL's best. And if they're not AFL's best, well then Luke should put that back on the club. Hey, Chris, I need AFL best around the edges. Don't go and get what's available. I don't want what's available. I want what's not available. So fill the edges with some great staff for me. Get cutting edge. Give me something different. Right now they have no point of difference. They got Marcus Bontempelli and that's it. He's their point of difference. So I would sit there if I could ask one question in a committee sense. I would say, what was the vision at the start of this time last year, the start of last off-season, once they finished their last commitment in 2022, what was the vision? The vision was to go and get Lobb and go and get Liam Jones, and we're going to build a spine. We're going to look like this. So have you looked like that? And why haven't you looked the way you thought you'd look? Because I think most of their errors have been their own choosing, where they play players, form of those players that have had to be bounced around and moved around. And in the end, they haven't been that top 4 team that they threatened to be. No, don't worry about the 8. They haven't been a top 4 team. And they're probably, 5 wins off that? Would they be 4 or 5 wins off? That's a big gap when you're jumping from mid-table to top 4. It's easy to get from the bottom 4 to mid-table. The jump is into the top 4, and they're a fair way from that. And there are other problems that now become real. They've got huge concerns with the Big 4 now. They've got to sell that this group will still be a premiership group to the Big 4 that are out of contract next year. And they cannot lose Norton, English, Jamara. Maybe they can lose Bailey Smith. But they're the 4 now that pose a challenge. And one may go this year. I don't know. But what are you saying to Aaron Norton if you slide a little bit next year? Why would you stay? Finance is not going to be the reason you stay. So there are the challenges. But don't live in this phase for too long. That it's not me, it's you. That's a bad time for a footy club.
Right, pressure index. Just quick pressure index here. It feels to me like Brad Scott put Essendon under the pressure index and Damien Hardwick will be able to do the same. I sort of feel like those last round performances are almost a blessing for a coach. And it was in every word that Brad spoke, and I couldn't help but think of Hardwick in the same way. If you're going to perform that badly at the end of the season, hey, we're doing it my way from here.
Doing it my way from here. So you think the end of the first year is more powerful than the start of the first year?
Yeah, because you're late arriving, I reckon. You didn't get the exit interviews. And Brad was about a month. I'd have to go back and check the exact date. and he spoke about it. He didn't get to control the off season. He's there to build the preseason, and that's why Dino had to be announced last week, so that he's there today. You know what you just put out in Hobart on Saturday? That's how you've all been That's how we all perceive you, weak and uncommitted.
So that's day one.
That's day one.
So
I think this is manna from heaven.
Day one, no problem.
Yep.
I reckon day one you've got all that arsenal, all that weaponry. I'm not sure you have after 12 months.
Okay.
Because what have you done if that's what you've been for 12 months? Why haven't you nipped that in the bud after 4 weeks? Why haven't you done it after 8 weeks? What, you let it get to 12? Now it's got to 24 weeks? What the hell are you doing? Why would you waste a year not having that exact
I don't
conversation?
think wasted. I just think
powerful
as
they've been
you.
awful for the last 6
They
weeks.
have. They backed out of the season so badly.
So why? So this is where we disagree on this, and that's okay to disagree on this. I think it's how they play. I think it's the strategy, and that strategy won them games through the course of the year because they were brilliant enough with the ball to win games. But you can't win consistently across the full course of the year against the best teams and at the pointy end if you don't defend. That to me hasn't changed all season. So we're going to agree to disagree on this. I don't know if you can stand at the front of the group and belittle all of them for not defending when they didn't defend for the first 17 weeks and you're in the top 5. And everyone's saying, oh, this is the new Essendon, this is the Essendon we love. So to me, it's a major structural and strategy change in the off-season, which questions why you do it in the first place. So that to me is where they've got to go. If they don't embrace chaos, they will be an also-ran for the complete tenure of Brad Scott. That's what we're saying. Look at the difference between what we've just spoken about with GWS. They've embraced this chaotic game and they're free-flowing and it's fantastic. Look at the top of the table. Which teams play with precision at the top of the table? None of them. It's the group in the middle and below. Oh, got to be safe with the ball. God, don't want to turn it over. I don't trust the players. Don't you dare kick it long. You go wide. They had 7 guys hunting for one 20-metre kick on the 45-degree angle 4 minutes into the game last Friday night, and I'm thinking, what is going on?
Yeah, they were hideous on Friday night.
But that's structure. That's what they've been asked to do. So I think major change in the off-season, which is exciting if you're an Essendon fan, but get on with it. Get on with it. I'm looking forward to Essendon rounds 1 to 4 next year. What does it look like? There's a late entrant, Gerard.
Yeah.
There is a late entrant. And we've always been a fan of Geelong's Mad Monday. You like their dress-ups?
Great humour.
Great humour. There's
Always pick the right pressure points.
They tend to nail it. You wouldn't believe who Grime Myers has gone as, would you?
No, don't tell.
And you wouldn't believe who Max Holmes has gone as. He's gone as you with the tweet. Delete the tweet.
He's very grey hair.
It's very good.
It's a bit of a setback for Monday morning. It is very good.
It's one you're going to have to embrace.
It's been building for a while, hasn't it?
It's taken the right way. Very, very humorous.
North Melbourne, did they get that right?
I think so. I just don't think so. You've got to put the pressure back on the AFL, the Kangaroos, with how bad they've been for 3 years. I just felt that if they finished 18th, there's no way they'd end up with 1-2, the free hit at Sanders, and then still hanging on to the Port Adelaide first-round pick and then their second-round pick. So to win and go effectively 2, lose McKay, get 3, and I still think now the AFL will give Sanders free of charge. So then you get a chance. You get the 3 players and you get an opportunity to give Alistair Clarkson some talent to get it up the table. I just didn't feel it'd ever work out if it was 1 and 2. Were you of the same belief?
Yes. As when we spoke on Crunch Time on Saturday, you just couldn't see how they would get 1, 2 and Sanders. So they get the culture building day. And they were terrific once they locked into that game. And it gives us that moment to salute Nick Larkey at the end. His work hasn't been lost on anyone, but it gives us that punctuation point to go, yep, stellar season.
So your earlier discussion about Brad at the end of his first year, I think it'll be interesting with Alistair. which players has he fallen in love with? Which does he think he can do without that have got some currency? I think there's quite honest conversations need to be had down here. Is Tarrant Thomas actually the man that's taking you somewhere? He's a great footballer, does some amazing things, but he's hurt them more than helped them over the last 18 months.
Yep.
Is there some currency there? Maybe you can get Gold Coast first round pick for that. Damien Harwick, the coaches see themselves as the saviour to these guys all the time. Kevin, go as far back as Kevin Sheedy. They always love the troubled superstar. So can you sell him? Or do you absolutely need him? I think that's the discussion they'll be having today.
Which way would you go?
I'm always a fan of banking 2 to 3 drafts together, as many elite picks as you can, and give Clarkson a dozen guys in the top 20 picks rather than have them scattered. So if it were me, I'd be trading Tarrant if I could get a pick to the level of the Gold Coast first round.
Yep. What they got right. Loop Logics, the future of construction management. For a free demo, visit looplogics.com.
Are you disappointed with how grey he's actually painted, how he's painted you here?
He's got quite thick hair too. It's a throwback to a former time. Wild card category.
He's got Bob Murphy, actually.
Actually, it does a bit, yeah. What do you want to do with the crowd for the qualifying final, Collingwood versus Melbourne?
Well, there has to be something. If you're going to finish top of the table and play a team that effectively has the same home ground, I think there has to be some advantage. For Collingwood finishing top of the table, Melbourne finishing fourth, there's no spoil. I think when you play at the same venue, it's a neutral advantage in a final series. The team that finished higher up the ladder should have 75% of the crowd. The crowd should be the advantage. So 75-25, and no bluing Melbourne, because you had your chance for 24 rounds to find yourself in the top position on the table. There's no advantage.
And your home final is the next one, either a semi-final or a preliminary final. That will be your hosted final.
If Melbourne played a Carlton, then they would have 75% of the crowd on Carlton. I think you have to have some advantage for the same venue, cancelling out any advantage which you've built over a marathon season. I mean, it's just wrong that Collingwood, Melbourne, 50-50 MCG week 1. There's got to be more in it than a McClellan Trophy or something. That means nothing. I would, if Collingwood had 75% of the crowd next Thursday night, it would be a huge advantage. They are the 24th player. They are a factor.
Would you have St Kilda at Marvel?
Yeah.
This was the perfect draw against the Giants, who are a small drawing team in Victoria. This was, I just feel like they missed a trick here.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't understand how you can have Geelong versus Fremantle at Gardenia Park, and then you can't have St Kilda versus GWS at Marvel. We seem to chop and change our own rules. I never understand why, if a team's qualified for their home ground, why they can't. I get it for maybe a prelim with Geelong if you've got a high drawing opponent, but how can you have Geelong versus Fremantle in a final down there and then not have St Kilda at home? I just don't understand it.
So there were 4 changes to the finals, to the makeup of the final 8 from last year to this year.
4.
Let's say there were 4 again.
Yep.
Which teams' seeding order are most likely to go into the 8 next year if things repeated? Most likely teams to go into the 8 next year.
Okay, so of my 4, at number 4, so the least likely of the 4 for me, the Dogs, 12 wins this year. The Western Bulldogs they're not looking for much, but they should already be there.
They should. So so they're penalised a little bit for that. They're at 4 as well. Only because right now we're disappointed in them. We're disappointed in you.
We're not angry.
Come back and see us a bit later on. 3.
3 for me is Fremantle. And I don't know. I don't even know why I've got them at 3. I look at Caleb Sarong and Brayshaw and I see what Jackson's doing, and I think they've just got to be there. If they stop playing with absolute boredom and open the valves a little bit and get some speed on their game and throw the magnets around and embrace a bit of chaos, they'll be there. And if they don't, we'll be having the same conversation next year.
Yeah. I'm going to put Essendon at 3 for all the reasons we've been talking. I think this is where Brad Scott really goes to work.
Okay.
2.
The Adelaide Crows. I'm excited about Rochelle and Rankin going cocoa bananas over there in the next 12 months.
I put Geelong at 2, but then I've just seen even their young blokes are looking old. I've just seen Max Holmes. He's looking old.
Now listen,
1.
we got out of this all right. We've embraced this. Don't turn on them.
1.
The Suns for me.
Right.
They won 9 games on autopilot this year. Damien Harvey going up there will change the whole box and dice. You've seen what Kingsley's done with Damien Harvey's plan at GWS, and look what that has brought to bear. So I'm thinking I'm all aboard them playing finals, and I'm not against them being a top 4, top 5 type team. You?
Adelaide at 1, which
Adelaide.
is the soft option because by Brendan McCullum and Ben Stokes' standards, they're already morally in the 8, aren't they? They're all the moral holders of the 8th place. So I think
The English
Adelaide are
cricket
the
team about
team
'em.
most likely. Our seedings for Tyre Power